Welcome, traveler. You're listening to the Beaten Up Jazz Record, an ASMR sleep story. On my channel. Here, gentle raindrops, soft whispers, and healing tales come together to help you unwind, relax your mind, and drift into a serene sleep. Tonight's story will gently guide you through memories of scratched vinyl and silent jazz, soothing every part of you. So, dear friend, get cozy, close your eyes, and let the story carry you away. Part 1. Discovery of the Scratch. I remember the afternoon light filtering through the attic window, dust motes dancing in lazy spirals around me. I knelt beside an old steamer trunk, its leather cracked, the brass clasps tarnished with age, and lifted the lid with a soft creak. Inside, beneath moth-eaten blankets and faded photographs, lay a stack of vinyl records, each one a time capsule of sound. And there, on top, was the scratched jazz record. The grooves on its surface were marred by countless lines and notches, like the ravines on an ancient map. I traced one deep scratch with my fingertip, feeling the cold vinyl give just slightly under my nail. Instantly, a memory surfaced, that warm summer night in 1974, the way his eyes had glowed under the low lamplight as he placed this very record onto his turntable. I lifted it out gently, cradling it as though it were a fragile bird. The label at the center was faded, barely legible, but I could still make out the cursive script: Miles Davis Quintet, Freddie Freeloader. That was his favorite tune. My chest tightened with longing and nostalgia, and for a moment, I closed my eyes, letting the silence echo that night's first notes. I set the record beside me and sat back against the trunk. The attic smelled of cedar and old books, and I could almost taste the faint tang of summer rain that had swept through the town that evening. He had invited me over for coffee, just two neighbors sharing a quiet Sunday, and the record had been his way of bridging the gap between us. I remember the hiss when the needle first touched the vinyl, the crackle like a sigh of anticipation. And then, silence before the trumpet called out, slow and soulful, weaving its way through the air. I felt his hand brush mine as if to steady the moment, and I swayed ever so slightly, the wood floor cool beneath my bare feet. Now, in the muted light of the attic, I closed my eyes again and let the music play in my head. No sound needed, just the memory of that melody. I pictured the way he had looked at me then, tender, hopeful, as though each note was a secret meant only for us. Time slipped away as I sat there, lost between past and present. My fingers traced the cracks on the record's surface, mapping out the journey we had taken together, each scratch a story, each groove a laughter or a tear. And though the vinyl would never spin properly again, its imperfections made it more beautiful to me, a testament to nights spent in dimly lit rooms, hearts open, expectations low, and magic unbound. I gently lifted the record and held it to my chest. The label, though worn, still bore traces of his handwriting on a tiny sticker, "To my muse, with love." My breath caught, and I whispered to the empty attic, "I still remember, you know," before placing the vinyl carefully back into its spot among the others. Rising to my feet, I brushed dust from my jeans and climbed out of the trunk's shadow. Downstairs, I would find a small turntable my grandmother's sold Crosley that still worked if I took the time to dust it off. I'd set it in the living room, pour myself a lukewarm cup of tea, and press the needle down, hoping that the spirit of that summer night would fill the room once more. But for now, in this quiet attic corner, the scratched jazz record held all I needed: a memory, a melody, and a promise that even silenced songs can sway the heart. Part 2. The first slow dance. I still feel the gentle tug of his hand at my waist, guiding me onto the polished wooden floor of the community hall. The room was bathed in the soft glow of amber chandeliers, their light flickering like lazy fireflies on summer evenings. A quartet played behind us: double bass, muted trumpet, brushes on snare, each note drifting through the air like wisps of smoke. My heart fluttered as I glanced up into his eyes. He smiled, a shy curve that made his cheeks dimpling. I pressed closer, letting the warmth of his suit jacket seep through the fabric of my dress. The music began its slow introduction, bass strings plucked with soft intention, and I felt time stretch and inhale around us. "May I have this dance?" he whispered, breath tickling my ear. The words were simple, but they sent ripples of joy through me. I nodded, barely trusting my voice to answer, and allowed him to draw me into the center of the floor. Our first steps were tentative: a toe here, a pivot there. Like two people learning a secret language for the very first time. His hand held mine softly, thumb grazing my skin in little circles. My other hand rested lightly on his shoulder, fingertips catching on the fine weave of his jacket. The trumpeter let out a hushed call, and we swayed in unison. Bodies almost touching, breaths mingling. I could feel the beat in his chest, a persistent thrum of anticipation. He leaned closer, and I caught a hint of his cologne woodsy, faintly citrus mixed with the clean scent of his skin. I closed my eyes, allowing the music and the moment to envelop me entirely. It was as if the rest of the hall vanished: no chattering guests, no skinny women in sleek cocktail hats, no waiters balancing trays of punch, only the two of us and the slow, tender melody. Each measure felt sacred. When the brushes whispered across the snare, I leaned into him, heart rising with every brush stroke. I imagined his pulse sinking to mine, two rhythms converging into one. The low hum of the double bass grounded us, like roots reaching deep into the polished floor. At some point, I dared to open my eyes again. He was looking at me, not just glancing, but really seeing me the way the moon sees the sea on a still night. I felt heat rush to my cheeks, and I offered a small, breathless smile. The melody swelled, trumpet and piano trading gentle barbs of sound. He spun me slowly, guiding me with the pads of his fingers at my back. My skirt fanned out around me in a whisper of fabric. The hall lights refracted on the sequins I'd sewn onto my bodice that afternoon, creating tiny pinpricks of light that danced like stars around us. I felt weightless. For the first time in my life, I believed I could float away on the melody, carried by his steady hand. His thumb brushed lightly over my wrist, anchoring me to this single heartbeat. When the music dipped into its bridge, the piano's chords deep and resonant, he drew me closer still. My cheek rested against his chest, and I could hear the muffled timpani of his heartbeat. I closed my eyes again, savoring that intimate rhythm. We moved as one until the final note lingered in the air. Then, slowly, almost reluctantly, we separated. I looked up at him, and our eyes met in a moment that felt as tender as the last breath of a sigh. He bowed his head and whispered, "Thank you." My lips curved in a shy smile, and I whispered back, "Thank you for the dance." Elsewhere in the hall, the quartet shifted into a brighter tune, but I could only think of that slow dance, suspended between two hearts. I felt the warmth of his gaze on me as I stepped away, and I carried that gentle glow back to my seat. That night, I barely tasted the punch or the petit fours. I sat by the window, watching the rain begin to fall in soft droplets, tapping the glass like a tender applause. Inside me, the melody played on, an echo of our slow dance, spun out silently in my mind. When I finally climbed the narrow staircase to my small apartment, I found myself humming that tune, each note brushing against my lips like a secret kiss. I pressed a hand to my heart and closed my eyes, replaying every step, every breath, every moment when he had held me so close. I lay down that night with the memory of his hand at my waist and the echo of jazz in my mind. Even as sleep claimed me, I could still feel the pull of that first slow dance, an imprint on my soul that would linger long after the music faded away. Part 3. Sunday mornings with coffee. I wake to the gentle hum of sunlight slipping past the curtains, casting golden stripes across our small living room floor. Still half asleep, I stretch my arms above my head, feeling the soft weight of the quilt and the faint echo of last night's dreams. He's already up, his silhouette framed by the kitchen doorway. "Morning, sleepyhead," he murmurs, voice low and warm like melted caramel. I pad across the hardwood, bare feet cool against the wood, and slide onto the counter stool beside him. He presses a mug into my hands, the porcelain heavy and comforting, and I inhale deeply, breath catching at the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Outside, a soft drizzle taps on the window pane, a familiar rhythm that blends with the silent jazz spinning in my mind. "Want to play that record?" I ask, nodding toward the little Crosley turntable on the sideboard. He smiles, nods back, and lifts the scratched vinyl from its sleeve with a careful reverence. I watch as he sets the record on the platter, careful to avoid the deeper gouges in the vinyl's surface, and places the needle just above the scratch at track's start. The soft hiss fills the room, a comforting prelude. Then, in my head, the opening trumpet line of Freddie Freeloader begins, slow and sultry. I wrap my fingers around the mug, feeling its warmth seep into my palms. The steam drifts upward, swirling in lazy spirals. He pours 2 cups and lifts his mug in a quiet toast, our Sunday tradition. To us, he says, and our mugs meet with a soft clink that echoes like a promise. I take a sip, bitter, smooth, with a hint of hazelnut, and close my eyes. The taste grounds me in this moment, gentle rain outside, warm coffee in hand, the memory of a melody that lives only in our hearts. We settle onto the couch, leaning into each other as though magnetized by the same invisible force. The record doesn't quite spin evenly anymore. The needle skips over the deepest scratch, and for a heartbeat, there's silence. Then, the music resumes, richer for its imperfections. His arm loops around my shoulders, pulling me into a soft embrace. I rest my head against his chest, listening to the familiar pattern of his heartbeat. "Do you remember our first coffee together?" I whisper. He chuckles, a low sound that vibrates through my back. "How could I forget?" he replies. "You spilled scalding hot coffee on your dress, then laughed so hard you snorted." I smile, heat rising to my cheeks, and nudge him playfully. "And you thought you'd woo me by playing jazz, and it worked, didn't it?" He presses a kiss to my temple. "It still works." We sit in companionable silence, letting the imagined jazz fill the air around us. Outside, the rain slows to a whisper, and the sunlight grows a shade brighter. I lift my mug to my lips again, savoring the last drop, then set it aside. "I love these Sundays," I murmur, fingers tracing the grain of the coffee table. He nods, and I feel the warmth of agreement in his gentle squeeze. When the track finishes, he reaches over to gently lift the needle, letting it hover before lifting it clear of the vinyl. I reach for the record, running my fingertip along its surface, feeling every imperfection as a reminder of every shared moment, each scratch a story, each skip a laugh or a soft sigh. He takes the record from me and places it back in its sleeve. "Next weekend," he says, "we'll try to find a cleaner copy." I laugh softly. "But then we miss these little skips, wouldn't we?" He grins, leaning forward to brush a kiss against my lips. Our quiet Sunday morning stretches on, coffee refilled, soft rain tapping at the windows, the memory of jazz alive between us. I close my eyes, savoring every heartbeat, every breath, every imagined trumpet call. And as I drift toward wakeful stillness, I know that even when the record's long gone, these mornings will play on in my mind, a gentle melody of love and warmth that lingers long after the last drop of coffee is gone. Part 4. Autumn leaves and long goodbyes. The train whistle blew in the crisp autumn air, its echo rippling through the station like a distant trumpet call. I stood on the platform, clutching my coat tighter around me, as golden leaves drifted down in lazy spirals. He stood beside me, suitcase at his feet, eyes fixed on the tracks as though if he stared long enough, the train might vanish before it arrived. I inhaled the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. The very essence of October in this little town we called home. In my mind, I could already hear the scratch of the jazz record, the slow, plaintive trumpet weaving through the piano chords, playing silently as I searched for the right words to say. He reached for my hand, the warmth of his palm contrasting with the cool air. "I wish I didn't have to go," he murmured, voice thick with unsaid goodbyes. My heart tightened, and I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "You'll write," I whispered, voice barely louder than the rustle of leaves. He nodded, eyes drifting to the little turntable that rested in my bag, the scratched vinyl tucked safely inside. "I'll play it in my mind every night," he said, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. I closed my eyes and imagined that melody, Miles Davis's cool notes dancing through the air, lifting us both, even as the train approached. When I opened my eyes, he brushed a stray lock of hair from my face, his fingers lingering on my cheek. "Promise me you'll sway to it, even if I'm not there," he whispered. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down my cheek. I nodded, catching my breath. "I promise." The train's engine idled at the platform now, smoke curling from its chimney like a gray ribbon. He lifted his suitcase and squared his shoulders, trying to look brave. I felt my own courage falter, and I wrapped my arms around him, holding on as if I could tether him to this moment. He hugged me back, arms strong but gentle, and I felt the steady beat of his heart against my ear. "I'll come back," he murmured into my hair. I pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, searching for truth in their depths. His lips curved into a small, hopeful smile. "I will." The conductor's bell rang, sharp and insistent. He picked up his bag, then paused, turned back to me and pressed his palm against my chest, right over my heart. "Until then," he said softly, "dance for me." I nodded, tears glistening in my eyes. As the train began to move, he leaned in and brushed his lips against my forehead. I closed my eyes, committing the moment to memory, the feel of his breath, the warmth of his touch, the distant echo of jazz in my mind. The train pulled away with a gentle rumble, carrying him beyond the bend in the tracks. I stood still until his figure was swallowed by the mist and the autumn leaves dancing across the platform. Then I let the tears fall, each one a note of sorrow and hope intertwined. Turning away, I made my way back to the little turntable I'd left in the corner of the waiting room. With trembling fingers, I set the scratched vinyl in place, dropped the needle, and closed my eyes. In my mind, The trumpet rose, and I began to sway alone, yet together with him in the silent autumn light. Part 5. Letters Across the Miles. I found the first letter tucked between the pages of my favorite novel, a scrawl of his handwriting on creamy stationery. The ink smudged slightly at the corner, as if he depressed his finger there in hesitation. I unfolded the paper with gentle fingertips, unfolding not just words but the hours of longing that lay between us. Dearest, it began, every dawn here reminds me of our Sunday mornings with coffee back home. I close my eyes and can almost hear the soft hiss of the turntable before the trumpet's first call. His words painted the melody I carried in my heart, as vivid as the day it first played. Each letter after that wove scenes of his New World cobblestone streets lined with ember street lamps, bustling cafes where strangers lingered over espresso but always circled back to the scratched jazz record. He wrote of whispered notes echoing off ancient walls, yet none could match the imperfect beauty of our vinyl's skips. I replied on matching stationery, sketching my own mornings, the way the sunlight slanted through the bedroom blinds, dust motes drifting like tiny dancers in the air. I described how I pressed the record to the turntable, waiting for its hushed crackle, and how I closed my eyes and let the music carry me across the miles to him. Our correspondence became a ritual, two souls tethered by pen and paper, by memory and melody. He folded his letters with deliberate care, creasing the edges exactly where I could slip my finger in to pull them free. I kept each one in a small wooden box, its lid engraved with a crescent moon, a silent testament to our nightly exchanges. In one letter, he described a gallery opening he attended, where a painter had attempted to capture the fluidity of jazz in oil on canvas. But the colors never moved the way Miles's trumpet does, he confessed, and none of the brush strokes carried the hush before the first note. I smiled at the thought, imagining him leaning forward in polite applause, thinking of me swaying in my living room to that same symphony in his mind. I wrote back about the record's newest scratch, a tiny nick near the chorus that I discovered when the needle caught and skipped just before Davis's solo. It's like the record knows our story, I penned, recording our joys and sorrows in its grooves. I told him how I traced that scratch each morning, as though it were a secret groove only I could feel. Weeks turned into months. Rain gave way to snow, and snow melted into the bloom of spring. Yet our letters remained constant inked bridges over the distance. I held one against my cheek as I lay in bed, breathing in his scent of old books and rainstorms. In return, he pressed my words close to his chest, a talisman against loneliness. Then came the letter with the torn corner. He apologized for the haste, explaining he penned it standing at a train station, early for a meeting that ran long. His handwriting wavered, as though his pen had trembled with emotion. He wrote, "I miss you more than I thought possible, my love. I ache to sway with you again, needled to vinyl, coffee in hand, rain tapping the window pane." Tears blurred my vision as I read those lines. I pressed the letter to my heart, imagining his breath warm against the paper. That night, I dressed warmly in the soft wool coat he sent me, its pockets still holding the faint scent of his cologne. I carried the scratched vinyl under one arm and the letter in my coat pocket, walking to the little station where I first waved him off. I sat on a bench, the record beside me, the letter open in my lap. I read and reread his words, the station's bustle fading into the background. I closed my eyes and let the imagined trumpet swell. I swayed gently, as if our silent slow dance could cross continents. A conductor's hat passed by, footsteps echoing on the concrete. For a moment, I believed he might step off that train and into my arms. But when I opened my eyes, it was only strangers moving past, each lost in their own journeys. I tucked the letter back into my pocket and pressed my hand to the vinyl's scratches. Returning home, I placed the record on the turntable and dropped the needle. The music sprang to life, each skip resonating like a heartbeat between us. I closed my eyes, letter pressed to my chest, swaying alone but together in memory. In the months that followed, our letters grew fewer, meetings ran late, life intruded. But never did a day pass when I didn't press that vinyl to my mind and hear his voice in each note. And whenever the world felt too vast, I'd fold one of his letters and tuck it inside the record sleeve, a whispered promise that, miles or no miles, our song would never end. Part 6. Cracks in the vinyl, cracks in us. I awoke one morning to a stack of unopened letters on the kitchen table. Their edges worn and corners curled from too many hands opening and closing them. Over coffee, I unfolded the first, but the warm words I expected were replaced by sharp edges of complaint. He wrote of missed calls, of waiting at train stations alone, of longing turning into frustration. My heart sank as I reread his words. I remembered the scratches on the vinyl, small but unmistakable ridges that made the needle catch and skip. That morning, it hit me, our love had begun to feel like that record. Beautiful, yes, but marked by imperfections that echoed every misstep between us. I wrote back in haste, each line edged with defensiveness. I pointed out how busy he'd been, how I'd tried to understand, how every letter he sent was returned with apologies and explanations. By the time I sealed the envelope, my chest ached with regret. The next letter arrived 3 days later. He apologized briefly before detailing yet another disappointment, a concert ticket gone unused, a missed Skype call, a forgotten anniversary reminder. His neat handwriting trembled, and I thought of the deepest scratch on our record, the one the needle always snagged on, no matter how gently we tried to guide it. That night, I carried the record to the living room and set the needle down. The usual crackle was sharper, more insistent, as though the vinyl itself was protesting. The music began, but at the chorus, the needle caught, and the melody fractured into an uneven stutter. I watched the black disc spin, each imperfect groove a reminder of our own unrest. Tears blurred my vision as the trumpet's call flickered away in skips. My reflection in the window pane stared back at me alone, framed by the yellow lamp glow, the rain tapping a restless rhythm outside. I wanted to reach through the glass, to touch the me I was before the cracks appeared. The next morning, I found another letter slipped under my door. This one was different, no complaints, only a question: do you still want this, with a small drawing of the scratched vinyl and two hands nearly touching above it. I held that letter close like a lifeline. In the silence that followed, I realized our love, like the vinyl, was flawed but not beyond repair. And though the grooves were haunted by our mistakes, they also held every note we'd ever shared. That evening, I wrote back simply, yes. I slipped the letter into the mail, heart pounding, hope and fear entwined. I placed the scratched record on the turntable once more, adjusted the needle by hand, and pressed it down softly. The trumpet wailed its opening call, stuttered once, then found its flow imperfect, beautiful, and ours. Part 7. The silence between notes. I sit alone in the dim glow of the living room lamp, the record long silent on the shelf. My fingers trace the grooves of the scratched vinyl as I hold it to my chest, a lifeline to all we once shared. The air is still, no rain, no coffee steam, only the faint hum of the old refrigerator in the corner. Closing my eyes, I let the memory of that slow trumpet note fill my mind. I play the record in my head, the hiss of the needle, the hushed pause before the melody begins, the soft brush of drums. I can almost hear his footsteps coming down the hallway, the echo of his shoes on the hardwood floor. My breath catches as I summon the warmth of his presence, his voice murmuring my name across the hush of vinyl and distance. I sway gently, though no music plays, feeling the echo of his hand at my waist in the emptiness. Tears slip down my cheeks. Each drop is a silent note of sorrow, a rest in the symphony of our farewell. I swallow hard, reminding myself that the record is broken, the song ended, and he is gone. Yet in the quiet between the notes, I find comfort. The spaces where the trumpet paused become a canvas for my thoughts, memories of candlelit dances, sunlit coffees, handwritten letters across the miles. In those silences, our love still breathes. I rise and walk to the window, placing the vinyl on the sill. Outside, the moonlight drapes the garden in silver. I imagine the needle dropping, the first crackle, and then the swell of that familiar tune. I press a hand to the glass, as if I might touch the music there. A soft sigh escapes me. The night is pure and unbroken, and I close my eyes against the pale light. In the silence, I listen not to a record, but to my own heartbeat, steady and resilient. He taught me that music lives in the spaces as much as the sound. And so I honor those pauses, letting them cradle my grief, holding every quiet breath as a promise that one day, I'll dance again. For now, I remain here, swaying to a song that only my mind can hear, letting the silence between notes be my lullaby. Part 8. Midnight walks in the rain. I stepped into the night, the umbrella shielding me from the steady drizzle. Each drop like a gentle percussion on the fabric above my head. The streetlights glowed amber in the mist, their halos blurred by the rain as I began to walk. I could feel the cool water seeping at my collar, but I welcomed the chill, anything to chase away the heaviness in my chest. In the hush between the raindrops, I heard it again, the silent jazz melody that lived in my mind. The trumpet's first long note unfurled under my skull, followed by the soft brush of drums and the warm hum of the double bass. Though no record spun in the room, I swayed with each imagined beat. The pavement gleamed underfoot, slick and reflective, and I watched my own shadow dance beside me. My umbrella bobbed in rhythm, matching the tempo of Miles Davis's cool refrain. Cars passed by in scattered flares of red and white, but I felt insulated from it all, wrapped in memory and melody. I turned down a narrow lane lined with wrought iron fences. The rain drummed louder here, its echo against brick walls like an impromptu drum solo. I let out a small laugh, soft and shaken. "You always loved the rain," I whispered to the empty street. Ahead, a flicker of neon from a closed cafe window caught my eye. Through steamed glass, I thought I saw two figures dancing, his silhouette and mine lost in a slow, silent waltz. My heart fluttered, and I paused, breath catching in my throat. But when I stepped closer, the window was empty. Only dark chairs stacked on tables and the dull throb of a lone neon bulb remained. I pressed my palm to the glass, fingers cold against the warmth inside. I imagined the music drifting out, carrying our memories across time and space. Continuing on, I rounded a corner and spotted the small park where we used to dance under twinkling fairy lights. Now, the benches were slick with rain, and the pond shimmered like liquid mercury. I closed my eyes, folding my umbrella, and let the rain fall directly on me. Drops slid down my face, mingling with tears I didn't bother to hide. Yet in that moment, I felt alive, the pulse of the rain syncing with the beat of my heart. I tilted my head back, mouth slightly open, and let each cool drop land on my lips. I began to dance slow, unsteady steps on the wet grass, lost to the silent trumpet and piano in my head. My coat spun out around me, and every rustle of fabric felt like an echo of his embrace. Minutes or maybe hours passed. The rain softened to a drizzle, and my dance slowed to a gentle sway. I opened my eyes and saw the path glisten under the park lamp. I knew it was time to go home, time to let the silent melody lull me back to the room where the vinyl slept on its shelf. Retracing my steps, I felt the lingering warmth of that midnight reverie. When I reached my doorstep, I shook my umbrella free of rain, then stepped inside with damp hair and soaked sleeves. I set the umbrella by the door and closed the heavy wood behind me. The house felt welcoming, wrapped in the hush of night and the scent of warm tea. I shed my coat, pressed my hand to my heart, and let the silence fill the room. There, on the shelf, lay the scratched jazz record. I smiled softly, knowing that outside, the rain had cleaned the streets, but inside, the melody still played silent, imperfect, and entirely mine. Part 9. Rekindled hope at a vintage cafe. I pushed open the creaky door of Le Petit Gramophone, the little vintage cafe on Maple Street, and was greeted by the warm glow of Edison bulbs hanging overhead. The air smelled of dark roast and old leather-bound books. I spotted Anna in the corner booth, tracing patterns on her cappuccino foam. "Emma," she called, her face lighting up. I slid into the seat across from her, the vinyl-themed wallpaper and retro record player behind her feeling like a time capsule. "How are you, dear?" she asked, voice gentle as the cafe's soft jazz, though I heard the real jazz only in my head. I sighed, stirring my tea. "Missing him," I admitted, though the words felt heavier than I expected. Anna reached over, covering my hand with hers. "Listen," she said, leaning closer. She tapped the table, and I heard it, the same slow trumpet line I'd carried in my mind for months. But this time, it wasn't he just imagined. The cafe's vintage turntable had come to life, playing a scratched record. My heart stuttered. I recognized those imperfections, the tiny skips right before the chorus, the gentle hiss before the first note. "Anna," I whispered, voice trembling. She nodded, eyes shining. She slid a small box across the table. Inside lay my scratched vinyl, its label still worn, but lovingly cleaned for the occasion. "I found it at a shop down the street," she said softly. "They said you'll want this back." Tears welled as I lifted the record. Memories flooded our Sunday mornings, the rain-soaked dances, the letters across miles. I could almost feel his hand in mine again, guiding me through that first slow dance. Anna reached into her bag and pulled out a letter, his handwriting across the cream paper. "He sent this with the record," she explained, sliding it toward me. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. "Dearest Emma," it began, "I heard you might be here someday. I wanted you to have this our song so you can feel me near, even when I can't be there. Meet me tonight at the old pier, and let us dance under the stars once more." My breath caught. The world outside the cafe window blurred as hope swelled in my chest. I looked up at Anna, whose smile was brighter than any neon sign. "Tonight," I whispered, voice firm with new resolve. I clutched the record and let her to my heart. The jazz melody, silent yet vivid, played on between us, reminding me that even cracked vinyl can hold a whole universe of sound and love. Part 10. A fragile reunion. I stand in the doorway of his apartment, heart fluttering like that first trumpet note. The walls are lined with books and framed photographs. But my eyes are drawn to the corner where the scratched record now rests encased in a glass frame, the grooves frozen in time. He hovers behind me, offering a small, tentative smile. "I wanted it safe," he says softly, voice carrying the weight of months apart. I step forward, hesitating only a breath before touching the glass, feeling the cool surface beneath my fingertips. "It's beautiful," I whisper, meeting his gaze. He nods and motions me to the sofa. We sit an inch apart, each movement careful, as though the air between us is lined with old scratches that might catch at any sudden motion. He reaches for my hand, fingers brushing mine like the lightest of brushes on a snare drum. I close my eyes, recalling nights of slow dances and whispered confidences. "I missed you," he admits, voice low. My eyes flutter open, and I give him a gentle smile. "I missed you more," I reply, tracing the map of his palm with my thumb. The silence that follows is soft and healing, a rest between two melodies finding their harmony again. He stands and crosses to a dusty shelf, lifting a small box with the turntable's needle inside. I thought maybe he begins, then pauses, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. I stand too, closing the gap. "Do it," I encourage, voice warm. He nods and walks to the framed record, gently removing the glass cover. My breath catches, watching him handle it with reverence. He places the vinyl back on the platter, careful to avoid the deepest scratches. I imagine the hiss of the needle, but when he lowers it, there is only silence, no music, just the quiet thrum of our shared anticipation. He looks at me, uncertainty lingering. I stand behind him, resting my hands on his shoulders. "You don't need music to play for us," I whisper in his ear, "we have each other." His shoulders relax, and he turns to face me, pulling me into a gentle embrace. I rest my head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, a reminder that some melodies live beyond any record's grooves. We stand there, framed by the dim lamplight, two bodies swaying slightly as if music gently played. In that fragile space, I realize our reunion, though tender and cautious, is more beautiful than any perfect performance. When we finally break apart, he reaches for my hand once more. "Thank you," he says quietly. I smile, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. "For bringing back the music," I reply. And in the hush of his apartment, with the scratched jazz record close by, we begin anew, two hearts learning to play in harmony once again. Part 11. Dancing on the Rooftop. I climbed the narrow fire escape to the rooftop, my heart fluttering like a fragile note in a jazz solo. He was already there, silhouetted against the neon glow of the city skyline. The wind tugged at my hair, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the sharp scent of rain on asphalt. He reached out a hand, and I took it without hesitation. Beneath our feet, The rooftop's gravel crunched softly as we found the small circle of clear space between the vents and satellite dishes. I closed my eyes and pressed play on the silent jazz in my mind, the trumpet's tender cry, the piano's warm reply, the brushes on the snare like whispers in the dark. Slowly, he drew me into his arms, and I rested my cheek against his chest, listening to his heartbeat sync with my own. The city lights shimmered below us, red tail lights tracing lines on glassy streets, office towers aglow with late-night workers. For this moment, the world felt suspended between breaths. He swayed us gently, guiding each step with the ease of someone who knows exactly where to place his feet. I let my arms drift around his neck, fingertips grazing the collar of his coat. The melody rose in my mind, slow and sultry, and I matched his movements, feeling the invisible rhythm carry us higher than the rooftop ledge. "Do you feel that?" he murmured, voice low as the double bass. I nodded, eyes still closed. In the hush between the imagined notes, I could hear the distant sirens and the soft sigh of the night breeze. We spun in a lazy circle, the neon lights dancing across our faces. My skirt fanned out like a blooming flower, catching the light in fleeting sparkles. He dipped me gently, and I felt my breath catch, the world tilting just enough to set my heart racing. When I rose back up, his eyes held mine steady and bright. I smiled against his coat, letting the warmth of his presence fill me. "I've missed this," I whispered, voice soft but clear. He brushed a kiss to my forehead, and I leaned into it, savoring the contact. "Me too," he replied, guiding me into another turn. The melody in my mind reached its crescendo, the trumpet's triumphant call just as the rooftop's edge came into view. We didn't step back, instead, we continued to dance, trusting each other completely. The city below seemed to fall away, leaving only us, two figures splayed against the night sky. When the silent music faded, I opened my eyes. He held me close, foreheads touching, breaths mingling. The rooftop was quiet again, no record spinning, no faint hiss, just the soft pulse of our hearts in perfect rhythm. He smiled, eyes warm with unspoken promise. "Thank you for dancing with me," he said. I pressed a kiss to his lips, sweet and sure. As we descended the fire escape together, my hand in his, the city's glow faded behind us. But inside me, the silent rooftop dance continued, a private melody that would carry me through every lonely night until he was always by my side. Part 12. Echoes of Laughter. The door to O'Hara's jazz bar swung shut behind me, and the familiar haze of amber light and cigarette smoke welcomed me like an old friend. I brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear and spotted him at our usual table in the corner, his grin as warm as the whiskey glow on his cheeks. "Emma," he called, raising his glass in greeting. I slipped into the booth across from him, the vinyl box tucked safely beneath my coat. Around us, the bar buzzed with late-night chatter and the clink of ice against glass. A trio on stage launched into a swinging number, the saxophone's brassy cry weaving through the low murmur of conversation. I closed my eyes and let the music fill me, imagining our scratched record playing softly in my mind, the trumpet and piano dancing together like lovers. He leaned forward, eyes sparkling. "Remember our first time here?" he asked. I laughed, the sound bright and easy, just like it had been years ago. "You tried to teach me the Charleston, and I nearly knocked over the drummer." He threw back his head and laughed, the sound rich and rolling. "You were brilliant like a hurricane in petticoats." I nudged him playfully, feeling the warmth of his presence weave around me. Friends waved from nearby tables, Anna with her mischievous grin, Marcus tipping his hat in salute. It felt like the old days, before distance and doubts had frayed our edges. We toasted, and our glasses chimed, stitching us back together in a moment of shared mirth. The singer's velvet voice floated over us, lyrics of longing and reunion. I pressed my palm to my heart, feeling its steady thrum. He reached across the table, capturing my hand, and I squeezed his fingers in return. For a few precious minutes, the world narrowed to this booth, smoke curling above us, laughter echoing in our ears, and the silent jazz melody weaving through every breath. In that hazy bar light, we rediscovered the joy that had brought us together, the echo of laughter carrying us forward. When the set ended, he pulled me up onto the small dance floor. Under the watchful gaze of old photographs on the walls, we danced again, lighter now, freer, our steps echoing every promise we'd ever made. As we swayed to the final notes, I rested my head on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for bringing me back here." He kissed my forehead, and I knew that our echoes of laughter would carry us through every silence to come. Part 13. A new scratch, a new memory. 1-4. I cradled the vinyl in my palms, its weight a comforting reminder of our history together. The label's ink was worn thin, yet every swirl of cursive still spoke to me of promises whispered in dimly lit rooms. I ran my thumb along the outer edge, feeling the smooth surface give way to the familiar ridges of countless spins. Across the room, he watched me with that same soft smile that first enchanted me under ember hallway lights. He leaned back on the sofa, fingers drumming in idle rhythm on the armrest, as though urging me to play on. The record rested on my lap, a fragile bridge between past and present. Without thinking, I brought the vinyl closer and pressed a kiss to its cool groove. Our eyes met, and in that instant, unspoken understanding passed between us. He rose and moved to the turntable, lifting the dust cover with careful reverence. The attic of memory stirred coffee-scented mornings, rain-kissed dances, letters folded in pockets, each scene spinning to life in my mind. He placed the record on the platter and selected the track we'd played 1,000 times. The needle hovered, then dropped, and though the room held only silence, I heard the soft hiss that always preluded the opening trumpet call. My heart fluttered as if carried on each silent note. Our faces drew close, breath mingling in the half-light. I felt his hand find the small nick near the chorus, the one I'd discovered months ago, a mark of every tear we'd shed apart. He traced it gently with his fingertip. And then, as if guided by the memory of past kisses, he pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was soft at first, an echo of cautious reunion. But it deepened swiftly, urgent and tender both, and in that instant, something shifted like the needle catching on a fresh scratch. I opened my mouth slightly, tasting the warmth of him mingled with the faint aroma of midnight rain. When we pulled apart, the room seemed to settle around us. I looked down and noticed the telltale line anew, shallow groove etched by our impetuous kiss. My breath caught at the sight of it, a perfect imperfection. He followed my gaze and offered a playful grin. "Well," he murmured, "I suppose that's our next memory, etched into vinyl forever." His tone was light, but I sensed the emotion pulsing beneath each word. I reached out, brushing my fingertip over the new scratch, gentle, reverent. "A new beginning," I whispered, voice hushed by both hope and wonder. He nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. There, in the soft glow of the night lamp, we swayed together, no music playing, yet every imagined note alive between us. Each imperfection in the vinyl, old and new, told the story of our love, its trials, its pauses, and now its beautiful renewal. As our bodies moved in tender embrace, I pressed my cheek to his chest. I could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, a living percussion guiding us forward. The world outside faded, leaving only our shared breath and the promise of tomorrow's melody. I pulled away from his embrace and settled back onto the velvet armchair. The framed city skyline painting above us glowing softly in the lamplight. The record lay between us on the low coffee table, its freshly marked groove catching the light like a slender silver thread. He knelt beside me, fingertips hovering over the new scratch, as if it were a delicate work of art. "I never thought I'd do that to a precious vinyl," I murmured. My voice sounded small in the hush of the room. He chuckled, warm and comforting, and angled the record so the new nick was easier to see. "That's what makes it ours," he replied softly. His fingers traced the line, following its gentle curve until it aligned with one of the older scratches, a meeting of past and present. "It's proof that we're still here, still making memories." I swallowed, feeling a swell of emotion. The room seemed to pulse with the warmth of that sentiment, as though the very air recognized our tiny imperfection as something beautiful. I reached out to him, wrapping my arms around his shoulders. He rose to his feet, bringing the record with him. We moved together toward the turntable, bodies brushing in a familiar dance. He replaced the vinyl on the platter and lifted the tone arm with deliberate care. For a moment, we held our breath. Then he dropped the needle. The usual crackle greeted us, but instead of skipping on the new groove, the needle glided over it smoothly, an unexpected blessing. My eyes widened in surprise and relief. He leaned close, whispering, "Maybe some scratches just make the music richer." I nodded, tears gathering in my eyelashes. That night, we danced slow and unhurried, spinning in the circle of light cast by the lone lamp. The piano chords echoed in my mind, matching each sway of his arms around me. Outside, the city was quiet, but inside, our private symphony played on. When the record's final note faded, I reached out and lifted the vinyl back into my lap. I ran a fingertip over the new scratch once more, feeling its slight indentation beneath my skin. He knelt beside me again, offering a small velvet-lined box. My breath hitched as I opened it to reveal a slender silver pin shaped like a musical note. "For your new memory," he said, fastening it to my dress lapel. I pressed a kiss to his cheek, my heart full. The pin gleamed in the lamp's light, a miniature replica of the melody living in our souls. We sat in quiet contentment, the record resting safe once more, its scratches a testament to our shared journey. In that soft afterglow, I understood that imperfections, whether in vinyl or in love, were what made each story unique. And as I lay the record back into its sleeve, I whispered to it, "Thank you for holding our past," then placed it gently on the shelf, ready to record every beautiful scratch yet to come. He helped me to my feet, and together we carried the vinyl over to the window seat. The night sky stretched beyond, the glass stars glimmering as if in rhythm with our heartbeat. I perched beside him, record in hand, and we leaned into the warmth of each other's presence. I tapped the new scratch lightly with my fingertip, listening to its silent echo. He brushed a gentle kiss against my temple, murmuring, "Every imperfection tells our story." I smiled and nestled closer, resting my head on his shoulder. Outside, a breeze rattled the window pane, carrying the faint scent of lilacs from the garden below. It felt as though nature itself was joining our quiet celebration, whispering approval of our renewed love. I closed my eyes, picturing the needle gliding over the new groove without a hitch, proof that some scratches only deepen the melody. We spoke in hushed tones, recalling how the first cracks had seemed like tragedies, and marveling at how those same scars had become reminders of joy and resilience. "I used to dread hearing the skips," I confessed softly. "Now I cherish them." He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me into a protective embrace. "Just like us," he whispered, "we're flawed, but stronger together." I let out a contented sigh, feeling every tension melt away. After a moment's pause, I stood and set the record on the platter once more. The lamp cast a golden pool of light over us as he adjusted the needle. I held my breath, half expecting a skip, but the first notes came through clear and warm. He reached for my hand, and we began to dance again, slow and sure. With each step, I felt the whispered swing of piano chords, the soft brush of drums, the soul-deep cry of a trumpet. We moved as if the music was playing for us alone, intimate, unhurried, full of promise. When the record wound down, I pressed my forehead to his chest. "That felt perfect," I murmured. He kissed the top of my head, and I could feel his smile against my hair. He guided me back to the window seat. We sat close, legs entwined, eyes on the night sky. The vinyl rested between us, its grooves now a tapestry of every laugh, every tear, every kiss we shared, including this new one. I reached for the small silver pin on my lapel, the musical note he'd given me. I touched it thoughtfully, then pressed it against the sleeve of my shirt. "A keepsake for every memory we make," I said, voice soft with emotion. He traced the shape of the pin with his thumb and nodded. "And a reminder that our song never ends." In the quiet that followed, we simply held each other, void of words, full of understanding. Outside, the lilac-scented breeze drifted through the slightly ajar window, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow's melody. We lingered on the window seat long after the record had finished its final revolution. In the hush, I traced the new groove one last time, marveling at how a tiny imperfection could feel like a promise. He wrapped both arms around me, holding me close as though he could keep every perfect moment from slipping away. "I want to remember this forever," I whispered, voice soft as a sigh. He tilted my chin with a fingertip, eyes shining with tenderness. "Then let us make sure we always add new scratches, new memories to our record," he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to my lips that tasted of reassurance and rain-kissed nights. I nodded against him, breath mingling in the cool night air. Outside, the garden's lilacs stirred in the breeze, their scent drifting through the open window like a benediction. I rested my head on his shoulder and closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his chest lull me into stillness. Each rise and fall of his heartbeat felt like the softest drumbeat, a rhythm that carried me beyond the fragile walls of memory into a place of calm certainty. I let my thoughts drift. Tomorrow's coffee, next weekend's stroll in autumn light, the promise of every gentle kiss yet to come. When sleep finally beckoned, he gathered me in his arms and carried me to our bed. I clung to him, holding tight as though our embrace could weave every scratch and every melody into the fabric of my dreams. As I drifted off, I heard in my mind the silent opening trumpet of our scratched record, swelling into a new refrain that spoke of hope, of renewal, of love unbroken. And in that gentle echo, I knew our song would play on, imperfect and beautiful, for all the days ahead. Part 14. Stormy nights and tender words. The sky darkened faster than I expected. The wind whipping the curtains against the window pane in frantic gusts. I sat beside his hospital bed, hand clasped in his, watching the monitors tick in soft green pulses. He'd been admitted with a sudden fever. His body rebelled against the storm battering the city outside. Rain lashed the windows in sheets, each drop sounding like soft tambourine taps on glass. In the lull between thunderclaps, I played our scratched vinyl in my mind, the muted trumpet, the hush before each note, the gentle brush of drums. The hospital's sterile hum faded, replaced by that intimate melody. His forehead glowed under the lamp's warm light, sweat beading at his hairline. I pressed a cool compress to his brow and brushed back a strand of damp hair. He stirred, eyelids fluttering. "Emma," he whispered, voice raw. I leaned close, heart tightening at the weakness in his tone. "Yes, love," I replied, voice steady though worry not at me. He tried to smile, but pain flickered across his features. "Play it, in your head," he murmured, "that song." I squeezed his hand gently. "Always," I promised. I closed my eyes, and the hospital room melted away, replaced by our living room floor, the Crosley turntable waiting. I could hear the hiss as the needle dropped, the soft prelude of jazz filling the air. He relaxed against the pillow, chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. In my mind, I began to play the melody for him, each trumpet call a gentle lullaby, each piano chord a caress. I sang softly under my breath, matching the silent rhythm. A whispered call, a gentle sigh. Soft brushes on the drums reply. Each line a tender prayer for his recovery. Outside, thunder rumbled low, but inside, my voice and the imagined trumpet notes created a cocoon of warmth. He turned his head slightly, eyes glistening. "Tender words," he rasped. "Thank you." I brushed my lips to his temple, tears pricking my eyes. "Just let it carry you," I whispered. "Let it heal you." The storm raged on beyond the glass, but in that room, our silent jazz wove hope through the monitor's steady beeps. I stayed by his side, soft words, an imagined melody swirling around us like a protective embrace. Part 15. The vinyl's silent promise. I stood in the soft glow of the living room lamps, the scratched vinyl framed on the wall beside the turntable. He sat on the edge of the coffee table, robes pulled around him, recovering still from the fever that had stolen his strength just days before. The air smelled of chamomile tea and old books, comforting and familiar. I crossed the room and gently took his hand, guiding him to the sofa. He settled against the cushions, eyes bright but weary. I knelt before him, cradling the vinyl in my lap, the one that carried every crack and skip of our shared journey. He reached out to touch the frame, tracing the scratches through the glass. "Our story," he murmured, voice soft as a whisper of piano keys. I nodded, heart swelling with the weight of memories held within those grooves. "Every imperfection," I said, "reminds me of where we've been and where we're going." He smiled, lifting my hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to my knuckles. I carefully removed the frame from the wall and placed it on the coffee table. Behind it, the turntable awaited, needle raised, ready to spin our scratched record once more. He watched me, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Promise me," he said, voice steady despite his lingering weakness, "that no matter what happens, no matter how many storms come, we'll always come back to this song." I took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of his request settle in my chest. I lifted the vinyl from its frame and rested it on the turntable's platter. With deliberate care, I lowered the needle onto the first groove, letting the familiar hiss fill the room. In the silence that followed, we looked at each other, two souls tethered by melody and memory. "I promise," I whispered, eyes glistening. "This song is ours, always." He reached out, fingers interlacing with mine, sealing our vow. As the opening trumpet note sounded echoing softly in my mind more than in the speakers, we rose together. He pulled me into his arms, and I let the music guide us. Each skip of the needle carried the weight of our past trials, and each smooth bar spoke of hope renewed. We swayed slowly, foreheads touching, breathing in time with the silent promise of that scratched melody. The world outside faded, the storm clouds had cleared, leaving a calm night sky framed by the window. Inside, our hearts beat in unison, a rhythm older than any record can hold. When the music wound down to its final note, we remained in place, holding each other, letting the last echo linger. I whispered into his hair, "No matter where life leads us, this song will always bring me home." He lifted my chin to meet his gaze, voice soft and certain, "And it will always bring me back to you." In the quiet that followed, we sat together, framed by the turntable and the vinyl that bore our story, scratched, beautiful, and unbreakable. Part 16. Years later, still spinning. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow over our cozy living room. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint aroma of old vinyl records, creating a comforting ambience that wrapped around our family like a favorite blanket. The turntable, a cherished relic from our youth, stood proudly on its stand, its presence a testament to the countless memories it had helped create. Our daughter, Lily, now 6 years old, approached the turntable with wide-eyed curiosity. Her tiny fingers reached out to touch the framed vinyl record that hung above it, a record that bore the visible scars of time and love. The scratches on its surface told stories of late-night dances, whispered promises, and the journey we had embarked upon together. "Mommy, why does this record have so many lines on it?" Lily asked, her voice filled with innocent wonder. I smiled, kneeling beside her. "Each line is a memory, sweetheart," I explained gently. "They remind us of the times we've shared, the love we've felt, and the music that has been the soundtrack of our lives." She looked up at me, her eyes reflecting the same curiosity that had once drawn me to that very record. "Can we listen to it?" she inquired, her excitement palpable. "Of course," I replied, lifting the record from its frame with care. I placed it on the turntable, the familiar hiss and crackle greeting us like old friends. As the music began to play, the room was filled with the soulful melodies that had accompanied our journey from the very beginning. Lily swayed to the rhythm, her laughter harmonizing with the music. I watched her, memories flooding back: our first dance on the rooftop, the stormy night in the hospital, the promises whispered over this very tune. Now, those memories were being passed down, woven into the fabric of our family's story. As the final notes faded, Lily turned to me, her eyes shining. "I love this song," she declared. "So do I, my love," I whispered, pulling her into a warm embrace. "It's our family's song, a melody that will always bring us together." In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of the past and the promise of the future, I knew that the scratched vinyl record would continue to spin, its silent promise resonating through generations. Part 17. Passing the music on. The living room buzzed with the warmth of a family gathering. Laughter echoed off the walls, mingling with the clinking of glasses and the soft hum of conversation. Children darted between adults, their energy infectious, while the aroma of home-cooked dishes wafted from the kitchen, grounding the moment in comfort and familiarity. Amidst the joyful chaos, the old turntable stood as a silent sentinel, its presence a testament to decades of memories. The framed vinyl record, now slightly faded, hung above it, a relic of our youth, bearing the visible scars of time and love. I approached the turntable, gently lifting the record from its frame. The familiar weight of it in my hands brought a rush of memories: late-night dances, whispered promises, and the journey we had embarked upon together. "Dad," I called softly, turning to where my father sat, his eyes reflecting years of wisdom and love. He looked up, curiosity piqued. "Do you remember this?" I asked, holding up the record. A smile spread across his face, eyes misting over. How could I forget? That record saw us through so much. I walked over, placing the record in his hands. "We want you to have it," I said. "It's always been a part of our story, and now, it's time for it to be a part of yours again." People.com 1. He looked down at the vinyl, fingers tracing the familiar grooves. "Thank you," he whispered, emotion thick in his voice. "This means more than words can express." As the evening unfolded, stories flowed freely: tales of love, loss, and laughter, all intertwined with the melodies that had been the soundtrack of our lives. The record played softly in the background, its familiar tunes weaving through the tapestry of our shared history. In that moment, surrounded by family and the echoes of the past, I realized that the record was more than just a piece of vinyl. It was a vessel of memories, a bridge between generations, and a symbol of the enduring power of love and music. As the night drew to a close, my father carefully returned the record to its frame, placing it back above the turntable. "Let's keep it here," he said, so that every time we gather, we remember where we've been and the music that brought us here. And so, the record remained a silent promise that no matter where life took us, the melodies of our past would always guide us home. 1. https people.com couple reunited with vinyl record from 1966 wedding after found thrift store 8749008 UTM _ source =chat.com couple reunited with vinyl record from 1966 wedding after it was found at thrift store. Part 18. Endless night, endless melody. The house is quiet now, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound accompanying the gentle creak of my rocking chair. Outside, the moon casts a silver glow through the window, illuminating the familiar contours of our living room. The vinyl record, our cherished relic, rests on its stand, its surface bearing the marks of countless memories. I close my eyes, letting the silence envelop me. In the stillness, the melody begins to play not through speakers, but within the depths of my mind. Each note resonates with the echoes of our shared past, the rooftop dances under starlit skies, the whispered promises exchanged over candlelit dinners, the laughter of our children filling the air. As the music swells, I feel the presence of those moments, each one a thread woven into the tapestry of our lives. The scratches on the record, once seen as imperfections, now serve as reminders of our journey, the highs and lows, the joys and sorrows, all culminating in the symphony of our love. The rhythm slows, mirroring the steady beat of my heart. I breathe in deeply, the scent of aged vinyl mingling with the faint aroma of lavender from the nearby vase. A sense of peace washes over me, each breath grounding me in the present while connecting me to the past. In this moment, I am both the listener and the composer, the dancer and the stillness. The melody continues, a lullaby guiding me into the embrace of sleep, where dreams and memories intertwine, creating a harmony that lingers long after the final note fades. And as I drift into slumber, the record remains, a silent testament to a love that endures, its melody echoing in the chambers of my heart, forever playing, forever ours.